Welcome everyone to the Adversity to Advantage podcast. I'm so excited today. We've got Andrea Woodside. We've been talking for ages trying to set this up, so I'm so glad that we finally locked it in. Welcome to the show. Let us know a little bit about you. What do you do?
Thanks. Great to meet you, Petra. My name is Andrea Woodside, and I came over from Canada about 26 years ago now. So
Really?
it's a long time. I came over for 6 months and ended up 25 and a half years later, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And I started my career in workplace well-being back in the day, and to this day, I continue to work in that space.
And I think times have changed, haven't they? As far as workplace well-being and the conversation, what do you see has changed as far as workplaces prioritizing this conversation?
Well, I think, 26 years ago, you'd walk in and they'd look at you like you were Satan and trying to find the 666 in your hair. They didn't want to talk to you about workplace well-being because, of course, that would mean that they had a problem. I'd say in the last 5 years, I've personally seen a real difference. And now what we're also starting to talk about, and I'd say in the last couple of years, is around suicide prevention, self-harm prevention in the workplace. So we've literally gone from 0 to 60. It's taken a long time, but in the scheme of things, I think it's been incredible.
But you've stuck with it. That's a long old time through being seen as Satan to consistently show up with the belief that maybe the conversation would change.
Yeah, I'm really stubborn. I'm super stubborn. So I'm a dog with a bone. I just have not given up. And I'm so privileged to be working in this field. And I think once you're in, it's kind of like you don't get out. You want to see it to the end.
All right, I'm gonna have to call you up in about 23 years because I've been in it for about 2. So I'll let you know if I'm just stuck. So Andrea, obviously the theme of this podcast is around adversity, right? And it's around the challenges that we face in our life. Because I find that most people, I'd say 99.99% of people who are in the well-being space, whatever that looks like, have some kind of personal story that's driven them or connected them into this topic that sort of drives us to want to create change. Does that apply to you? Do you think your work is meaningful because of personal connection?
Oh, 100%. I think very much I found my way into workplace well-being really randomly. It's a long and rather dull story, but it was one of those serendipitous things where I literally came here without a job. And next thing I know, I'm working in workplace well-being. And I had no idea what it meant. But what it did was resonate with me because I think my own experiences, and again, I really do believe, Petra, there's no hierarchy of pain. I really firmly believe that.
What do you mean by that?
I think one can go through anything and it's all relative. Mm-hmm. And so what I really wanted to help to change, and it really sparked something in me, was to help people to tell their stories. Because every story is important. And in the workplace, we all have our stories, right? And it was really for me sort of saying, okay, look, I'm in a lot of pain. Things haven't been easy, but I'm in no more pain than anybody else. So if I can get out there and sort of encourage employers to recognize their people as human beings with their story, with their dreams, their passions, their insecurities, etc., then I think that was how I really felt that we needed to start encouraging. And I wouldn't want to work in any other place because it is such a privilege for me to hear people's stories. And I've been lucky enough for people to want to listen to mine.
Yeah. I love that so much. So give us a bit of context just about what was early life like. I love to know if kids, I guess, if we looking back, think that our parents and the education system sort of built our resilience in the way that it needed to be built for our adult life. Do you feel like you got that start in life?
I don't, actually. Like so many other people, I think we can look back on our lives and recognize as adults the kind of trauma that was at play. And again, I'm not saying that there's a hierarchy of trauma. I think it's so about what affects individuals. I was a very sensitive child. I was very unsure of myself. And I always found this world a really kind of weird place. I remember as a really small kid thinking, God, this is just the weirdest place. Yeah. Not really understanding how this came about, how I ended up on this planet. My first suicide attempt was at the age of 7. And I think for me, recognizing that there was an out at that age was a revelation. I mean, in fact, I still remember being told by somebody that if I did X, it could be fatal. And I was so intrigued by this. I just thought, wow, this is absolutely extraordinary. It was like suddenly, as a 7-year-old, I'm thinking, my God, there's a way out of here. And it was absolutely something that I think really kept me going as well. So knowing that I could die at my choosing really helped me to cope with what was going on in the present.
So it's like you had some kind of control,
yeah,
in a world that perhaps you didn't have control.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so,
yeah.
I mean, 7 is so young. I mean, we talk about sort of more and more adolescents sort of taking their lives and sort of being pushed to the edge in that sense. But the 7, you're really just a child, right?
Yeah.
So do you mind just give us a little bit of context, what was going on for you that would have led you to that sort of way out, or that feeling hopeful about that way out?
I think there were so many different dynamics at play. And I think for me, it was never feeling quite sure about the world being a safe place. It felt very dangerous. In fact, I was self-harming at the age of 4 as well. So I can look back now and I think, whoa, that was really self-harming behavior, which of course one doesn't identify at the time. The relationship that I had with certain family members was very difficult. I felt very much to blame for some of the toxic dynamics in the family. And there was a lot of just having to feel that somehow I could fix everybody. And so when you're 4 and you're kind of hoping to fix everybody, it's a really slippery slope.
That's a lot of pressure as well. And that
Yeah.
message obviously came from somewhere, either
Yeah.
through shaming or this feeling that you should be able to be different or do things different.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think there was a lot of that shaming. I'm not pinning this on one particular person, but I think also the school, because you mentioned school earlier, and I think that was an important thing, that because I was so distressed, I think I was treated as though there was something kind of pathologically wrong with me. Now, I'm about to turn 50. And so, of course, we look back 43 years ago was my first suicide attempt. I mean, that's quite some time ago when we start to think about, much like employers have shifted the discourse. I think schools, thank God, now are shifting the discourse. But back in those days, it was very much a punitive response. There is something wrong with this child, instead of saying there is something wrong for this child.
Yeah.
And there's a really, really big difference between the two. By the time I was 8, obviously very vulnerable, pretty much suicidal all the time.
And so when I'm just curious, if you're attempting or in this place, at any point, did a teacher, a parent, a role model, a sibling, I don't know, kind of notice at this point how desperate the situation was and perhaps begin to put something in place? Or did you just consistently feel like the problem child that needed to be fixed?
It was very much, I was the problem child that needed to be fixed. And you know, the reality is when you're penalized, punished, shamed for being so-called out of control, then of course you start to think, well, that's who I am. So that becomes your narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah. It totally becomes your narrative, because you don't want to let anybody down. If you start behaving well, then you'll probably be rejected. You want to give people, leave them with what they want.
Yeah.
So, I can see that dynamic now, but I think I was in such an enormous amount of pain for a variety of different reasons. It was when I was 8 that I was groomed by a caretaker at the school. Perfect job for a pedophile, isn't it? Isn't that great? So Tommy sexually molested me for 3 years from the age of 8. And it was pretty much every day. And it wasn't picked up on. However, when I was about probably just almost 9, a teacher did sit me down in her way. And boy, I mean, God knows where she is, but it really, really actually helped me get through the sexual abuse. She didn't know that I was being sexually abused. I would like to think, obviously, but she sat me down after school one day and said, "You are good at so many things, and there is so much for you to look forward to." And it was that sort of just an adult saying, "I see your value, I see your worth," even though I was being sexually molested virtually every day, 5 days a week for 3 years. That I could almost sort of use that as an anchor. So when I was being abused, I could remember those words. And that was really, really, really helpful.
So striking how the impact of that, based on how you weren't getting that from anywhere else, somebody just praising you or seeing your value to give you a bit of a purpose or a light or some kind of drive forward. And I love this. I got the chills when you said it, just because teachers, parents, caretakers, people don't realize the impact of their words, even if they never sort of get the full circle. You changed my life, right? People just don't know. And I always hold on to that people impacted my life. And that even if I don't get the feedback loop, I'm like, well, I might be the person that says the thing that supports that person moving forward, right? My goodness.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, I would love to see this woman again, even just once, to say 41 years later.
You remember her?
I remember distinctly where we were.
Yeah.
I remember what she was wearing.
Yeah. Goodness.
Isn't that amazing?
Like you locked it in, like a freeze frame.
You locked it in. So when the sexual molestation became overwhelming, which, I can guarantee you 5 days a week, 3 years is grueling.
And that's going to affect your ability to concentrate, your ability to do well at school, to create friendships, social life, your home life, like everything around you, I imagine, has a ripple effect.
Yeah. So I was being bullied constantly in school. Right. Constantly. Kids would chase me home and throw things at me, and then going into a home that was volatile, shall we say. So there was no real respite.
Yeah. Did you have siblings? You didn't say. Were there any siblings in your house?
Yes. So I have a sister.
Okay.
Who, thank God, was not affected by this particular individual.
Yeah.
And I think we both have looked at each other over the years and sort of have said, okay, well, we got through it, and that's amazing. My sister is a magnificent human being who's incredibly strong. She really, she's got guts, and she's been through a lot, but she's also used that to support other people. She works in a field which is very much the helping profession. And she's a very sensitive person. And I think I'm really proud of both of us, because I think you can go one of two ways.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I'm fascinated by. Like, how is it? I recently heard that there is actually a resilience gene, that some of us have a resilience gene. I wasn't aware that almost the baseline can be different for different ones of us. Because I'm one of 5 siblings who were raised in a religious cult and had all manner of sort of crazy circumstances, right? And we've all kind of survived it in different ways. And in a way, and this sounds pretty crazy, but I feel like I went to the lowest place of all of us. So it got the darkest: alcohol addiction, risky behavior leading me into dangerous situations, like that whole self-destruct cycle. Yeah. Equally, once I got it and switched things, I was able to use it as a catalyst to get to perhaps be more successful or to push myself in different ways. And so I'm always fascinated by this, like the level of darkness can equate to like that equal level of light, if that makes sense. It makes it kind of binary, but there's something about a catalyst moment, and it can go one of 2 ways. So we can stay in that addictive, self-destruct, self-harm, whatever behavior, and some, of course, it can end in suicide. Yeah. Or we can somehow change the meaning or the narrative, to use your word, to allow us to have purpose and give back in some way. So we've only got 45 minutes. I feel like we need to talk for a couple of hours, because I'm curious. So the sexual molestation stops 3 years later, or this person gets discovered. What happens at that stage, and where do you move on from there?
Well, I had to move schools. It was just the natural time. So this whole class moved up to the next school. So the molestation stopped. But, one could argue that had I been there for another few years, it would have continued. So I was very lucky in that it was cut off because I'd actually moved schools. And then I kind of, I think and so what you've just said about, the addiction and about risky behavior. And I mean, that was literally my life until my 30s.
Yeah. So
literally my life.
Yeah.
With, alcohol problems off and on over the years, and other suicide attempts and hospitalization, self-harming. And just this incredible just sense of, I knew underneath this all that I would rather hurt myself than hurt other people.
That, yes. Oh,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was almost, I don't want to say this was a conscious decision as I was, sinking my 15th glass of Bloody Merlot and, doing other things that were probably really dangerous for me. So it wasn't a conscious decision. It was more just knowing. It was a knowing that I don't know how this is going to end. And God willing, I will actually get through this. And I will do this every single day just to wake up and keep going, which isn't living.
No.
But actually that bardo, like what I consider those years of my life, the kind of bardo in the Tibetan Book of Dead, it's sort of not dead, not alive.
And it's essentially survival. And I don't think I've ever heard anyone articulate what you just did, which is I'd rather hurt myself than someone else. And I completely relate to that knowing, and it would be a conscious kind of phrase that would be like, you don't understand, I'm protecting you.
Yes.
Even though the carnage would then have a ripple effect and affect other people and blah, 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 blah. But like this weird kind of counterintuitive, like if I let my actual rage out on the world, like you have no idea, right? And so this is safer for everyone.
Oh, man, I mean, that rage, like as you say, if you unleashed it, you literally don't even know what to do with the rage.
Because
you haven't by that point, Petra. It'd be interesting to hear your view, but the processing of that kind of trauma doesn't even begin to occur until you're ready. And so, a lot of people say, well, you should have been in therapy at the age of, 20 or whatever. And you kind of think, well, but you don't know what you don't know.
No.
You don't know what you don't know. How can you even begin to rationalize an adult sexually abusing you when you're still in your 20s? All you can cope with is just literally saying, I'm in so much pain and I hate myself so much. And I think a lot of people that I've met who have been abused in whatever way, because again, there's no hierarchy, right? I think what I've always noticed is that, and the only way I can articulate this, that the damage is actually done when that person subconsciously or consciously says, if a monster like that can do that to me, what does that make me?
Uh-huh.
If a monster like that can do something like that to me, what does that make me? So I think for me, that's in talking to people about trauma, it's that sense of how bad must I be to have been raped or beaten or abused or, emotionally eviscerated or whatever it is that people go through. And I think that to me was really the key. And that's something that I started to go in my 30s. I was like, oh my God, I am not the monster.
Okay, wait, what does ready look like? Because I completely take your point. You don't know what you don't know. And you sometimes can't access the support because you just don't have the information, the education, the first steps, like you just don't know. And you're in this pattern or this cycle that becomes habit, right? Self-destruct habit, right? And you also see that people almost expect that of you and they reinforce it in a way without realizing it, right? As you described as a child. And so for you, how did you know that you were ready? Like, I can definitely kind of map out 3 major, what I would refer to as rock bottoms, that were
Yeah.
like, this is my catalyst moment. Either I
Yeah.
die and just get it the fuck over with, or
Yeah.
I figure out how to live.
Yeah.
That was my fork in the road, right?
Yes.
So how did you know? What was that realization that I need help, or I need to talk, or I'm ready for something?
Yeah. It was, for me, it was a very startling moment in my mid-30s where I literally got down on my hands and knees. I'm not a religious person. I believe that there is something out there, who knows? But I'm not a religious person. But I found myself on my knees one day after a night of what I would consider such self-destructive behavior. I'm actually happy to be here, lucky to be here.
Yeah.
And it was an evening which really, I think, changed my life. And I literally got down on my knees and said, whoever is out there, hear my prayer. I can't continue to live like this, but I don't want to die. And knowing that I didn't want to die was a revelation. So it made me start to think, so if I don't want to die, why don't I want to die?
Yeah. What do I want to
And I
live
didn't,
for? Yeah.
yeah. And I didn't want to die because none of that was my fault. I did not ask or deserve to be abused by the many people in my life to that point who had abused me. And I
That
thought,
thought just dawned on you?
it literally did. It literally did. I think I'd spent so many years sort of thinking, wow, I must be this awful a person
To almost
that,
deserve this.
and I'm
Or,
such a horrific person, and maybe I actually should die to kind of make the world a better place. And I think that so what happened that night, I had been very violently raped by somebody that I'd gone out on a date with. This was the 3rd rape of my life at that point. And we do know that people who have been sexually molested as children are at higher risk.
Yeah.
For all sorts of different reasons. And I thought,
I just want to highlight, people don't often understand that.
yeah.
People often think, well, then maybe the trauma wasn't that bad if you're actually putting yourself in these situations, right? Or like their logical answer, not having experienced it, is, well, you would just shut down and protect yourself from all sexual encounters. When actually the opposite is often true, which is, well, my worth is only connected to toxic sexual or destructive spaces, right?
Yeah.
People just don't understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. And I think that's also, that kind of feeds into that whole narrative around,
I'm a bad person.
Well, what were you doing
to
make somebody rape you?
It's your fault.
My question is actually, what were they doing to actually rape you? But anyway,
no matter
there
what
position. There we go. Yeah, there we go. So I think that was my rock bottom. And rock bottoms come in all forms. And I've also said to somebody, said to me recently the other day when we were chatting, and she said to me, I'm wondering when my husband's going to hit his rock bottom. And I looked at her straight in the eye and I said, there is no hierarchy of rock bottom.
Yeah.
So if you're waiting for him to be arrested, that actually might not be anywhere near his rock bottom.
No, that's your version of what desperation should look like.
That's right. And desperation is a really good word for this, Petra, as well, because it's like you are literally in so much pain. You're almost like a caged animal. And anybody who comes near you, you're going to lash out at and sort of say, get away from me, because you don't want them to even be in your proximity, because the pain from you is so big that you don't want anybody to actually be harmed by it, which is why that self-imposed isolation is such a big thing, I think, for those of us who have survived trauma.
And then isolation just makes the whole thing worse, because then we never get to voice, and get some sense check on how we're thinking or how we're perceiving things. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, that was my moment. And then I started the work, and it took me probably another 6 years to get into regular therapy.
Is that because it was just a slow process of getting out of total destruct into a healthier survival until actually being open to the possibility?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because many years before, when I was 26, so back in 1996, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Okay.
And actually, it was so I spent my entire life being labeled, all sorts of different things and whatever. And so, of course, I thought, this is great. I've got a new identity, which people will accept more than being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, which is pretty bizarre when you think about it, right?
Yeah. I'd rather have this label that could make sense to myself and other people. Yeah.
Yeah, because we still somehow wonder how a child got themselves into the position of being sexually molested. I hear this. I do hear this. Well, 2 years ago, I finally met a psychiatrist who, I swear to God, he was just really, really smart and clearly trauma informed.
That helps.
And we had a long chat, and he asked me about my life, and he said, "Do you think you have bipolar disorder?" And I said, "No, I don't." He said, "What do you think you have? What do you think you have?" I said, "Well, if we were looking at kind of what actually is causing me some problems is complex PTSD, anxiety, and depression. It's a no-brainer."
Yeah.
Went off the meds for bipolar disorder, put onto an appropriate medication. The thrust of the therapy changed slightly, and I am in the best place at the age of 49 than I ever have been in my life.
Have they rescinded that diagnosis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was it was a pain in the ass, Petra, because of course I'd done articles and television programs and all for years about bipolar disorder, and I had to phone all of my media outlets and say, "Look, sorry, really, whoops, got that wrong." Okay, it was pretty funny. It was like, oh shit, I'm not going to look like I've been running around saying, "Hi, I've got bipolar disorder."
But I just want to highlight that we are the expert on our own experience.
Yeah.
And that people go to professionals and get told something. And yes, with all the good will in the world, they're seeing you for an hour or a couple of hours to try and help you make sense of things. But you. And sometimes we need to say the stuff that isn't being said to actually go, no, this doesn't feel right. I might not be the professional, but it doesn't feel right. And I just see all the time, like the authority stuff maybe comes up and people just go, okay, yes, sir, you're right, right?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Just very briefly, because we don't have that much time, I'm curious about those first, so rock bottom, you say it takes about 6 years to like step into therapy. What were the things maybe you were practicing, starting to try? Were you starting to talk to people? Like, did you reduce alcohol? Like, what were you doing to just practice being awake and self-awareness during those 6 years?
Yeah. I made a conscious effort to get rid of some very toxic people in my life. I ended up, I'm now divorced, but married a really lovely human being. And we're still friends. And I was very blessed to be with a man who taught me that you don't need to be abused.
Wow.
And he's a good soul. He really is a good soul. So, I mean, marriages break up for all sorts of reasons. We turned out to be better friends than husband and wife. But
I think sometimes a partner is if we, the universe, whatever, we have a partner for a period of time that allows us to learn or to heal with the witness. And that doesn't mean that has to be the Disney forever. It's like, I have gratitude for my ex-husband of 13 years for being a witness and seeing me through my worst rock bottoms. And now we want different things. I'm at a different place, and great gratitude, and we can close that chapter or evolve it, right? It's really useful to not make us wrong again for failing at marriage, right?
100%. Oh my God, 100%. Because that sort of whole thing about one's identity becomes about the mistake.
Yeah.
So no, I agree with you. And I think the other thing for me really was when I started to figure out, because in this Judeo-Christian society and, the world religions are all about forgive and all this thing. And I thought, fuck forgiveness. Yeah. I have no one to forgive.
Yes.
Okay. What I choose to do and this is like a daily thing that I do, Petra, is not to forgive and forget. I remember and recover.
Wow. Remember and recover.
I remember and recover.
Yeah.
My job on this planet, Petra, I firmly believe this, is to leave this world a better place than I found it. And every day is an opportunity for me to wake up. First thing I always, it's such a practice now, it's like a habit. First thing in my head in the morning, before I even get out of bed, is to spend a few moments there to say, what am I going to do to make the world a better place today?
So it gives you purpose.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, if I am going to bear witness to somebody else's pain, I have to be able to do that witness with myself. I have absolutely a huge amount of belief that whatever we go through, the end game is to leave the world a better place than you found it. Not just as you found it, not worse off than you found it, but actually better than you found it.
Which takes commitment, focus, self-awareness.
Commitment. So I try and be really good at sleep. Get some exercise every day. I don't have toxic people in my life. What was really interesting is a few years ago after my marriage, I got together with somebody who turned out to be a narcissistic sociopath. And I'm using that term clinically. I'm not using that lightly.
Yeah.
And he was, without a doubt, the single most abusive relationship I've ever had.
Was this after the healthy relationship or the? Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
And I was kind of pissed off at myself because I thought, how did I get myself into that? And my therapist just looked and she said, sometimes when you think you got the lesson, you got to go back and do it again.
Ugh, I hate it, but it's true. Yeah.
It is so true. And it's so annoying. And that my moment with he was really, boy, am I so pleased that he was in my life. I mean, he stole tens of thousands of pounds, nearly lost my house. I mean, I won't even go into it, but the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse was unbelievable. I literally, he literally burned me to the ground. And then I had that second point in my life where I thought, okay, Woodside, here we go. All right. So you come through that, you come through that, you come through this. What are you going to do with this? And I'll tell you, my mantra in life, Petra, is my track record of getting through shit is 100%. And I'm going to keep it that way.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was just a reminder. He was a reminder, actually. He was a reminder.
Long-term, horrific.
He was an expensive reminder, granted, but a 40,000 pound reminder. But he reminded me actually of my intrinsic value.
Wait, explain that to people, because what we've just heard is that he's reminding you of what a bad person you are and like emotional verbal abuse, right? And now you're saying he reminded me of my intrinsic value. Explain that to us.
Yeah. So clearly there was something going on for me where I thought, oh, let's have another pitch at the post because I haven't quite learned this lesson, right? So let's go with somebody who I subconsciously know will be really abusive.
Yeah.
And when that ended, it was like this knowing in that moment. It was like just sort of going, actually, you know what? I needed to learn that. And I needed to know how bad that abuse was to remind me that actually I am the opposite of it.
And to practice having a voice in a horrific circumstance, right? And you hadn't had a voice for most of your adulthood even, but your childhood.
Yeah, exactly. So I found my voice and I continue to find my voice. And I think when we talk about recovery, people sort of think about there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to recovery. And the hard thing is that recovery also means getting back into old patterns sometimes. Mm-hmm. And then getting out of them much more quickly than you did the first time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Revisits, but the cycle's quicker.
It's quicker. And I think every day is about recovery. You know, we talk about addiction. Every day is recovery. We talk about trauma. Every day is recovery. And I'm in a place now, Petra, where I may meet other abusers. Okay, I might.
Out there. Yeah.
But I know that that person that I've just described was the last man with whom I will ever be involved who will behave like that.
You drew a line in the sand.
I'm done.
Yeah.
I am now officially done. Took me a while to get it. But I got it.
Which is so exciting and amazing.
Which is totally cool.
And then talk me through, do you think that your adversity and the challenges, the consistent, relentless challenges that you faced in your life have made you into the person of character that creates, like, are you grateful? I don't know, it sounds quite extreme, for the things that have happened in your life in order to be the person that you are now?
Yeah, I would say I'm less grateful for the things that have happened to me. I'm more grateful for whatever little molecule in my body has always stayed there reminding me that working through the pain is worth it.
So that kind of hope, that sense of, I want to say purpose, that might be the wrong word, but I guess hope that you can move through things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm really grateful for that. Am I grateful for the sexual molestation and the bullying and the rape and etc.? No, I wouldn't say I'm grateful for it, but I am grateful that it's tested me to the extent where I am absolutely not afraid of other people's pain.
Right, yeah.
I am not remotely afraid of other people's pain. It doesn't scare me, it doesn't frighten me, it doesn't freak me out. I can stand and witness with that person, beside that person, and feel nothing but privilege.
And you're grateful for yourself, for your courage, for your bravery, for your ability to learn, your growth mindset, your perseverance. Like, I love that reframe, that it isn't like, oh, forgiveness and I'm grateful for all the shit in my life, but it's going, I'm grateful for me. And that's quite a contrast from like, I hate myself, destroy myself, right?
Oh my God, like, yeah.
I've got this, you're a badass,
Yeah, it's like the badass thing. It's like, my track record of getting through shit is 100%. Believe me, a few people have actually tried to take me down. Somebody who's going to take me completely down is just absolutely not going to have any luck. I'm the only one who can do that to me, and I'm choosing not to. And this is about conscious choice as well. We have to be consciously aware and making choices every second of the day. Nothing happens to us. So the sexual abuse, for example, it was a situation I was in, but it wasn't because I was such a bad person. It didn't happen to me because I was deserving of it. But what happens to me now is actually my choice. I'm completely in control of walking away from toxicity, of challenging toxicity, and of reaching out to people who need support. That's a conscious daily decision. It's a conscious choice.
So I love that it's the superpower off the back of this is being able to sit with other people's immense pain, to hold it, create space, to support other people, and to connect with empathy. That's what I'm hearing, because we can only really truly do that if we've witnessed our own darkness in a way.
Yes.
And then I'm curious about, how do we cultivate conscious thought? So you're saying every space is a decision for conscious thought rather than reactive thought. And I know you've done therapy and a whole host of sort of personal development type things. Do you have habits or practices that kind of support you in being who you want to be now?
Yeah, I think aside from, so lifestyle is obviously really helpful. For me, I haven't got the attention span for mindfulness, so it never really worked out for me. I just get distracted and start doing shopping lists and stuff. It's like, so what I do is, again, I sort of said earlier, wake up 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 50 seconds, whatever it might be, in bed in the morning when I wake up, before I get out of bed, consciously say out loud, what am I going to do to make the world a better place today? I also like the idea of gratitude, and I think gratitude is enormous. So every day, at the end of the day, I'll write 5 things down that I feel really blessed for. Another thing I like to do, Petra, is to write down instances of synchronicity in the day.
Oh, amazing.
Which is really cool.
Everywhere when you're consciously awake, right?
Yeah, when you're consciously awake and you go, my God, isn't that cool? Because synchronicity is all about connecting to other human beings. And every single day, something I always do is stop for a chat with somebody I don't know.
I love that.
A conscious thing I do every single day, just can be a 20-second chat. Or going up to somebody the other day, there was a woman trying on a dress at John Lewis, and she looked really, I don't really know. And I went up to her and I just said, you look fantastic. That's such a great color for you. And we ended up having a little chat about the Christmas party season and all that sort of stuff. And I went my merry way. I didn't do it for her. I actually, in a lot of ways, I did it because of that connection is so important. That's what keeps us here. If you can make somebody smile even once a day, man, you got this. You got it.
And it supports our mental health. It allows us to develop courage, get out of our comfort zone. Connection gives us all the serotonin boosts, and and in our world of technology, it seems like we need to make more of a conscious effort to do that, because it's like the world is conspiring to just keep us, addicted to our devices and not actually sort of eye contact connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
This conversation is so exciting, and I know you're in South London too, so I'm like, we've got to hang out.
We do have to hang out. This would be fabulous. Yeah.
I'm so excited. We have to spend more time together. But for now, where can people find you if they want to connect with your work or just with you as a person?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Minding Work Limited, and they can find me on Twitter as well.
Lovely. We'll add that into the show notes. And finally, what does the future hold for you? Do you have a sense of like where work, life, love, what's in the future for you?
Well, this is a big year for me. I'm about to turn 50.
Woo.
And I was given some really good advice. A lot of people are saying, oh, you've got to have a big party. And a friend of mine, Sally, a darling friend, and she said, oh, Andrea, screw it. Screw the day. Make it a year.
Ooh.
So once a week in my 50th year, I'm going to do something fun. Not for my birthday, but just to celebrate that actually 43 years ago was my first suicide attempt. That's a big anniversary.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
And I love just the conscious celebration.
Yeah, you got to milk it, right? Milk it. You only turn 50.
Milk the hell out of it. And it's so, again, the contrast, it's so opposite from that kind of self-hatred, punishing, self-destruct, to just going, let's celebrate life and the fact that we are alive and that you have 100% track record on surviving all sorts of shit. I admire you so much, Andrea. Thank you so much.
Right back at you. Okay. Thank you so much.